New mic update. As someone that was the only child and also the eldest child of the family, I was always faced with the burden of all of the family responsibilities handled to me. This meant that I had very little chances to make mistakes in my life. It meant I had to do everything in the right order at the right time, so it worked out for my favor. Maybe that's why only children seem so self-centered. But this also meant I had to plan everything in my life beforehand in order to avoid any mistakes that would jeopardize my future and also my family's future. On the positive end, it made me really hardworking. I was able to do a lot of the things that I didn't think that I would be able to do because of that pressure that kept coming from my family. It meant that I was able to put in the work towards the goals that I knew that I had to do in order to succeed. But having all this pressure and responsibility at such a young age also came with a consequence. This meant that I could never take a risk on my own. I couldn't make any choices that didn't align with my current goals and stray away from the path I had made before. This meant that in high school, if my friends ever asked me to go hang out, in my brain I would be thinking that I can't because then I would be skipping work. And if I would be skipping work, that means that's less money for that week. If that's less money for that week, that means that my future savings would be less in general. And if my future savings would be less, that means less money to take care of my parents when they're older. And less money in the future probably means that in the future, if my parents ever need any sort of major surgery or a lot of money, I wouldn't be able to afford it. And if they can't afford it, then you could tell that I am an overthinker. So all in all, I was always the planner. What this meant for me in high school was that I would make all of my goals propel me to a good enough school to get me a good enough education, to get good enough money. And because this is such a long journey, my plans had to be flawless. Whether in the future that meant career-wise, study-wise, or even just hobby-wise, it meant that every choice that I made had to be perfect in order for the next step to be as well. So in my head, that meant that failure was not an option and mistakes were not an option in my life. So what do if I can't make mistakes in my own life? I analyze other people's lives. This meant that I was reading self-help books, memoirs, and watching YouTube channels on how to become the best version of yourself. And with the amount of resources we have right now, it was overwhelming for someone that was trying to make just their first step in life. I was like a plant cell experiencing turgor pressure. If you don't know what that is, it's basically internal water pressure that pushes a plant cell membrane against the cell wall, and the outward hydrostatic force keeps the plant tissues rigid, preventing it from wilting. Sometimes turgor pressure is good. It keeps the cell wall intact and it keeps the cell safe. But constant pressure from the outside, like these memoirs and other people's opinions, and constant pressure from the inside, like your friends and family's opinions of you, will cause pressure instability. For us, it'll feel like we're stuck in one place and we can't move, despite of all of the opinions and information we get. When I was a kid, my mom loved to read me this story. It's called 小马过河, which is basically young horse crossing the river. It is a Chinese fable that starts like this. Our main character of a little horse, she walks through the forest and smells this delicious scent of grass. She follows the scent until she reaches a river. As it turns out, the grass scent was on the other side of the river. Now, one thing to note is that this horse is very young, so she has never crossed a river, let alone this river at this size. She sees an old cow in the river drinking water, so she goes up to the old cow and asks, "Is the river deep? Do you think that I can pass through?" The old cow moos and says, "No, this river is very shallow. It barely touches my belly. I think you can cross." Unsatisfied with the answer, the young horse turns to the tree next to her and asks the squirrel who's living up there, "Hi squirrel, do you think that the river is deep? Do you think that I can pass through?" The squirrel yelps and says, yes, the river is very deep. I fell the other day from my home and I almost drowned. I recommend you not to go in." Now she was confused and frustrated. With opposing options, she begins to ask even more animals around. And the more answers that she got, the more confused that she got. Because all of the answers were different. Frustrated with all of these answers, she decides finally for herself that she's just going to go into the river. She didn't wait for any more opinions. She stepped in and found out that the water wasn't as deep as the squirrel said, and it wasn't as shallow as the cow said. I think you guys already know what this story is trying to get at. I think that's the thing that I had to learn myself, that every person I ask, my teachers, my mentors, my friends, my family, they're all in their own place in life, and they all form their own opinions based on the experiences that they've had and evidence that they've had from their lives. So maybe the goal is to recognize when you've gathered enough input from other people and when it's time to stop asking. I think that's something that I definitely want to improve on, to embrace the unknown and to just step in. And I know it's easy for me to say and just talk about it right now and not make any actions, but when you've spent your whole life planning for every single moment and every single step of your life, the idea of stepping out and taking any sort of risk outside of your path that you've created by yourself sounds terrifying. What if something does go wrong? And what if everything gets set back? Like, even now, just saying these words out loud goes against all of my beliefs from before. But here's what I am trying to understand right now, and that is that there will never be enough satisfactions from where you stand right now. If you're on a journey of self-improvement like I am, you can't just stay in the same environment and expect different results. The grass will always be greener on the other side because it's something that you don't have yet and you have not achieved. And the other thing is that I've realized you can't plan for everything, right? Like, not because planning is bad, you can plan certain things, but because you were making all of these plans when you were still in high school, right? Our career counselors in high school and our teachers always ask us and press on us, what are you going to do in your future? Do you have a goal set yet? And it forces us as teenagers to suddenly put ourselves into this confined space and area of study in which later we'll get a good enough job to have a good enough life. And you're making these future plans based on the things that you knew as a high schooler. The version of you in high school, mapping out your entire future. High school you barely knew how to do calculus, and you expect that version of yourself to calculate the rest of your life? How do you plan for something you haven't discovered yet? How do you leave room for things that are going to happen that haven't happened yet? The people, the experiences, the ideas, the memories. How could you possibly account for all of those things in high school? The older you get, the more the world opens up to you, and the more ideas you garner throughout your life. And some of what it shows you is going to be something that you want. It's going to be something that you want to implement into your life and pivot towards. It's probably going to be something that you didn't even know existed when you were 16. So you can't plan for a wondrous life. You can plan a good enough life, but you can't plan the life that was meant for you. So yeah, step into the river. You don't know how deep it is until you get inside, but that's kind of the whole point. I hope you like this video. It has been something that I've been struggling on a lot. Let me know if you do like this form of dialogue or you'd rather have more professional. Yes, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!